Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Content Crowd. The Content Crowd is a podcast where we like to explore what makes content resonate, from creative habits to point of view shifts to behind the scenes breakdowns, so that listeners and me alike can start mimicking others and start making content that actually matters. I always like to start off these episodes by reminding you that this podcast is sponsored by Scrappy ABM. Scrappy ABM helps you build repeatable account-based marketing plays and actually teaches you how to do them and own them in-house so you can graduate from us and go on to do your ABM in-house. Today, I am pleased to announce my guest, Kaleigh, who is a all-around, I'll just say creativepreneur. That's the word, right? I would just say all around. You do a lot of things in the creative space, and so today I would love to learn from you and help some of us that are kind of stuck in the B2B content box learn how to make content like people way more creative than us.
Cool.
So thank you for being here.
Not a problem. I'm excited to be here.
Well, go ahead and always ask like what people do, and you kind of do a lot of things. So I'd love for you to just kind of like talk to us about what do you tell people that you do when you get into those awkward conversations about what you do for a living.
Yeah, it's always like a pretty loaded question. So yeah, for starters, hi, I'm Kaleigh. I live here in Huntsville, Alabama, and I basically am both a photographer and graphic designer freelance. So I work entirely for myself. When I started my photography business, I deep dove pretty quickly into the wedding industry. So I was pretty well known as a wedding photographer in the North Alabama area for the past, I'd say like 2 to 3 years. But over time, I've started to kind of like back out of the wedding industry a little bit just because it's so demanding and all my weekends are being taken up. So now I do mostly family photography, grad, seniors, branding, all of that. And then I also now do graphic design, so brand identity, marketing, package design, and website design. So a lot more freelance, can work Monday through Friday as much as I can.
Yeah. So you're in kind of like an interesting space where you are, and I'm bringing this up because the audience here is majority like B2B, but you're like, you do both. Like you're like, obviously like wedding is going to be majority B2C, I would assume. Like, I don't think there's like business weddings, right? So, but then you've moved into doing like family, but you also mentioned like branding shoots, and then you also have the design side of things that's also like more B2B. So how do you I guess the big thing would be like, how do you manage sort of those two identities? Like it's like two segments that you're like trying to reach, or you like have to reach in all under one umbrella.
Right. So I think kind of the best way to describe it, which at the same time isn't the best way, is when I got into photography was my hobby, and then it ended up becoming my full-time job. And when you turn a hobby into a full-time job, it takes all the glamour and fun out of it. Unfortunately, like you get to live your dream, which is so exciting, and you get to do the dang thing, as people would say. But at the same time, you kind of lose that creative outlet that you put for yourself when you have a different job. And so when photography became more of my full-time job, I was lacking that outlet. And that's when kind of I started doing graphic design. So now I feel like my brain has almost started to split again, and I see more of my graphic design business as heading to being like my job, and my photography starting to become my hobby again, which is kind of the point. So with the graphic design business, it's more of meeting with other business owners to work on their brand identity and their websites. A lot of them work 9 to 5. They're not going to be working on the weekends and calling me up on Saturdays to take pictures of their high school seniors and things of that nature. So I feel like that's kind of how I started to split it in my brain. Yeah. Although with photography, I still have to work through the week with editing and back of house business stuff. But at the same time, kind of like you mentioned with photography, it is so like B2C, like client based, while the graphic design business is still like in my brain B2C because they are my clients, but they are also other business owners. So the conversations that I have with them scratches a different itch than it
Yeah.
would be to chat with families about like what stage in their life they're trying to document at this time.
Okay, that's interesting. So is the goal for you to make the branding studio side of things become like your new job, and then you'll no longer do photography for paid work,
Uh,
or
I
you'll
don't
be more particular about what you choose to do?
Yeah, I think it'll be more 50-50 because with photography, unless you have like a photography studio or you're a very not famous, but just very put together not couple photographer, what is it? Grad senior photographer. It's kind of hard to have a super lucrative photography business because although from the outside looking in, like a family session might cost $400, well, we might only get like 5 family sessions a month, and $2,000 is pretty hard to live off of if 50%
Hmm.
of that's going to be taken for taxes, expenses, all of that type of stuff. So the majority of my income in the photography world came from weddings. And so as I try to back out of weddings, it's almost like I'm trying to fulfill that gap with web design and working on branding for other businesses. So I think there'll always be I will always be a photographer. Like I will always take couples photos, seniors, grads, headshots, branding, all of that because I really do love photography. It's just I'm losing that financial outlet, and
Yeah.
so I'm kind of switching it to being something where if I have an off weekend and I don't have anything, I can travel to see my family, and I'm not worried about weddings and stuff because when I was at my peak, like the last 2 years, I'd say I was at my peak. I was shooting 30 plus weddings a year, which that's over half your weekend. So if my
Yeah.
friends are having babies or getting married or having birthday parties, I'm like automatically out of the loop. Like there's very little chance unless their birthday party is going to be on Tuesday night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always been the hardest part, that I feel like from all my friends who were photographers, is the ones who like do just weddings. And it's like, it looks really cool because, like, especially if they're going to like a destination wedding, like it just looks so fun. Like they're always in different places and they're traveling around. But then it's like, but then your entire weekend is like there and traveling if you have to travel, and then your entire week is like editing, and it's like it just feels like it could get very like um not like tiresome, but just like you kind of feel like you're missing out on a lot.
Yeah, and you kind of start to become ungrateful for it, which sounds really bad. I remember having a conversation with my husband about it, and he made a comment of like, "Well, Kaleigh, people are paying for you to like travel to these
Yeah.
places." And I'm like, yeah, I agree, but it's when they want me to be there, and typically it's on their budget, so I have to get like a not the best hotel or not the best flights, and then on
Yeah.
top of that, my husband won't necessarily always travel with me to these locations because I'm gonna be gone all day on Saturday, and then Friday night, I'm going to bed early, getting all my gear prepped. It's not like an exciting
Yeah.
rip for anyone. So you do get to see cool things and you get to see really great stories be told. But at some point, you kind of, like I said, you kind of become ungrateful, which is really sad because it's a dream that you had. You
Yeah.
kind of have to like back out to be able to get back into it, is
Yeah.
a good way to
Yeah.
put it.
No, that makes sense. I mean, and you mentioned like you did 30 something. I mean, that is a lot of weekends. Like if it was like one time a month, that's like a pretty exciting thing that I feel like you
Yeah.
could work around. And it's not
Yeah.
like, and you're talking about being like ungrateful. Like I understand like those kind of things. Like not too long ago, I worked on like the weekends and had like Monday like off. But it's like everyone else is working that day and no one wants to do anything on like, Sunday night or like Monday. So like I might as well just work on those days and then basically never feel like you're actually off because you're not getting to enjoy all
Right.
the things everybody else is doing.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so you've built two businesses, and they're not like in my mind not like super far from each other. Like they're like photography and like branding, like those kind of things all to go together. Um, I'm wondering like what was your process of building or how did like building the two businesses differ?
So
if
with
at all. They may not have differed at all. They may just be.
They kind of I feel like they kind of stemmed from the same place. So before I started in photography, I actually had an engineering job. I had like a typical like 9 to 5 engineering career, but I worked in construction specifically. And if anyone knows anything about construction, you literally work like 12-hour days. So I was working like 70 hours a week basically. And so photography was it kind of found me out of nowhere. Someone knew that I had a hobby camera body and was like, "Hey, can you take some photos of me so my Instagram looks a little bit put together?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And that kind of stemmed into getting more clients and creating a marketing strategy. And then it built and built and built and got to the point that I couldn't sustainably do both. And so I left engineering, took photography. So it was more of a seed that was planted that just kept growing until it got a mind of its own. And then I had to make a decision and decided to just take the leap because I was young and why not?
Yeah.
And then now with graphic design, it was more of, again, I'm just doing photography, but then you have to do back of house, different type of business type things for your business. And with my engineering degree, I think I just look at business, like creative businesses differently than a lot of my creative friends. And so I would just like kind of throw out these strategies and marketing. And then I really loved web design. When I was in college, I loved coding. I loved all my coding classes. So once I got to creating my own website and started working with Illustrator, when growing up, I was super artsy, like went for all the art contests, like loved art class. So working with Illustrator was like itching something for me from my childhood that I adored. And once I realized I loved like the business part of business so well, but again, I'm so creative, it just felt like that made sense. And then I persuaded my friends to let me help them. And then kind of that same situation where a friend came to me for help, friends started coming to me, and then it started a pathway. It hasn't gotten to a point where it's like has a mind of its own where I have to like pick between the two routes, which personally I'm happy with because like I said, I don't ever really want to let go of photography. So I think just with photography and seeing how it grown, I have a better understanding of how to maintain it and not let myself burn out
Yeah.
with it like I have done in the past with my photography business.
You mentioned something I thought was interesting that you were thinking about like business or like this marketing strategy part of it differently than like your other like creatives or like your other like creative friends. Do you have like specific examples of how you just approach things differently than you've seen like other creatives do in the same space?
Yeah, I feel like a big one, which isn't surprising, but kind of is at the same time, is like really paying attention to who your ideal clients are and trying to think the way that they think. I feel like a lot of times with creatives, we just get so excited about our art and we want to put it out into the space and then we want everybody to love it. And when it doesn't get all the love we know it deserves, then it kind of causes people to backtrack and we're just so emotionally attached when it's not necessarily like I say all the time, it's none of my business what people think about my art. Like if I love it, I love it. And that's really all that matters. But when it comes to a point of making money, you have to understand like who your ideal client is and think the way that they think so you can set up your strategy to attract those people in the right way. In the photography world, there's a big thing known as content retreats or content days where one photographer will host a bunch of content ideas and other photographers will pay to go to those content days to shoot the concept to like learn new things. And a lot of photographers will crash and burn, including myself. I've learned the hard way, but some of my friends will be like, "Oh, I really want to do that," but when I've like seen if there's interest, like no one has really said anything. And my response is, yeah, because your Instagram and everything is geared towards like families with children or couples getting married. You shot that wedding. Now all of the bridesmaids follow you. Now all the groomsmen follow you. All of your family, like you shot that family. Now all of the mom group friends follow you. It's not other photographers following you. So you're already not reaching out to the right clients. It's not that your ideas are bad or it's not going to work or it's not something that you should explore. You're just not starting from ground zero first.
So how do you? I really love that scenario you laid out, because that's been a. I mean, I think that's everybody's like first problem with like anytime they're doing like any sort of like social media, especially like
Mhm.
because like you said, like if you are like if you're a photographer and you're taking really great photos of like weddings and all these things, like the people who want to hire you for weddings or family photos, they're going to be the ones following you. And then when you're trying to then do the like work on my business side of the things, like your audience is not there. So how did you find, which I know you said you like crashed and burned on that, but how do you like suggest, or how have you figured out that you can balance like, how do you make something for like the people that you want to buy from you, but then also make something that other photographers want to like emulate or learn from?
Yeah, so I feel like to start, you have to start slowly posting and sharing more about your story or what you're doing.
Yeah.
From any of the content days that I've went to and I've seen the host and like what they do, they will post more of like the behind the scenes of the wedding day and then show examples of their photography or lay down the groundwork of photography and kind of explain it. And that's what's going to start nibbling and biting towards other photographers, especially if we should utilize the things that are free to us, like reels and TikToks and all these other online social platforms where you don't necessarily have to pay anything to start like growing an audience. It's you have like kind of like I said before, you kind of have to think what they would think. If I was a photographer just getting started, what brought me towards the other photographers that I ended up following? It was it because I met them, and if it was because I met them, then maybe I just need to go to more networking type of opportunities, either that's bridal expos or people just getting together to work while they drink coffee, or maybe you need to reach out to other photographers and ask if they want to meet up and work at a coffee shop that day and start like kind of growing now this new audience of those type of people. You have to kind of do the grunt work to get there. And then also one thing, especially kind of like what I learned more on growing my clientele for just photography in general is I guess to back up even further, when I started my photography business, I was in the mindset that if I'm going to be shooting, I'm going to be paid because
Mhm.
I'm shooting. And my business almost deep dove straight into the ground. And I probably wouldn't have had a photography business until I heard the advice that sometimes you have to shoot for free to build up to what you're trying to get to. And same thing within that industry. Like maybe you have to offer something for free, either it's like blog post or forums or guides or something to show the credibility that you have. So people will be more willing to invest in the knowledge that you have to offer.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to not being, if you want people to invest in you, you have to invest in yourself at the beginning. And if that means that you're not getting paid for work that you're putting out there, then that just might be what it looks like. And then it's also always about the people you know and the networking skills that you have and the strategy that you set up for yourself to kind of expand that umbrella to try to gravitate more people to, I guess, pay attention to you.
Yeah, I love I love that the part you just mentioned, and I hope that anybody that is on my B2B like content marketing side listening, this is something that I've preached many times on this podcast, and just like in general with clients. It's like you have to create content of some kind or do something of some kind that is trust building and educational and very awareness level. Like you can't assume that the first time somebody lands on your website that they are going to buy from you. You have to put out things where you're not asking for anything, you're only giving. And I mean that translates to like, again, like blog writing, or you put together like a guide of some kind where you don't ask somebody for their email address and all this information. Sometimes you have to do that. I know that like people hearing this probably are like, then what's the point? But you're building that trust there. Like there's a lot of value in actually giving a ton of value first. Um I'm also interested in you mentioned this I think in the last answer, um, creating something that you like for yourself, but also you've got to create things that people like that want to buy from you or
Yeah.
hire you.
Yeah.
That's that. I feel like that's got to be like a hard or just like a big struggle with most photographers, because I imagine that the things that really good, like not just photographers but also really good editors, like people that can do really but like good both, are like the people that want to buy from you or like work with you don't always like what is like the best, and I'm putting the best in quotes,
Yeah.
because I've definitely seen like very popular photographers, and I'm just like their editing is like me just being like, critiquing, like their editing is like bad, like it's but always obviously like a space for people that like what that looks like. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not good.
Right.
But I'm just wondering, like, do you find yourself, you know like, I don't know, like pulling yourself back from doing something that is like super creative, or pushing that edit a little bit further, because you're like, people that follow me or follow photography in this style won't like what I'm doing if I do this?
Yeah, for sure. I think with photography, it's subjective, like all
Yeah.
art is. And I think I have started to reach that pivotal point of creating like this super clean, fresh edits that are super tech focused and starting to lean more into like the messy, artsy, double exposures, grainy, like super soft focus, things like that. Because before, when I was taking photos, I felt like they needed to be really clean to be
Hmm.
considered good. And I think that was just part of the engineering brain in me. That one thing that was one reason why I was so good at my engineering job is because I was really good at taking technology that people didn't really know that much about and learning just about everything I could about it, and then creating systems surrounding this technology. So when a camera was handed to me, I was really quick to know exactly what I was looking at and what all the acronyms meant and what I was working with. And then once I started working with subjects, I took a lot of that into practice and tried to get super clear photos. And like you said, that's not really necessarily what everybody wants.
Hmm.
But at the time, that's what I wanted. So that's what I focused on, was just super clean, very tech focused imagery. And I think over time it's gotten that plus a mixture of being kind of on that messier end. And I think from here going forward, it's going to slowly start to get even a little bit more messy, just because I feel like when I see art that like gets me going, it's art that has just like it almost I feel like the best way to describe it is it's almost so candid to the point that it almost wasn't meant to be photographed, if that makes sense, because it was like a split, like, I just got that photo really quick because it was happening,
Hmm.
and I feel like that's kind of where I want to take my photography, so it gives the emotion of seeing what is in the image, but it also gives the emotion of how the image was taken, instead of it being like, this is a super clean image of these kids playing together, but it's not, it looks like I told them to go play together and I set up the image to be perfect. And I kind of want to move away from that all the time and give it more of that storytelling of like, these kids were running around and I was running around with them so I could
Yeah.
get exactly what was happening. There was one point in time, there's also one thing also too that a lot of photographers will do, where if you book a photographer for a session, you might get um, as many photos as they think will work, like
Mhm.
100 photos, 200 photos. It just kind of really depends on what they took and what they feel like is useful, compared to some photographers where it says you're only getting 10 edits. And in
Mhm.
those situations, I've done that before, where I would do a session and I'm like, you're only getting 50 edits. So I would send off watermarked photos and they would go pick the 50 photos that they wanted me to edit. And sometimes it'd be photos that I didn't necessarily think were the best, which was
Yeah.
always interesting. But then they would also pick images that I really wanted to edit. But in a way that they probably weren't expecting. So they can't obviously see what I can see. So I felt like it was taking the creative out of the photography. And so when I would edit them, I felt the pressure that these all had to be in color. They had to be perfectly, like, they couldn't be tilted funny. There could be nothing wrong with them. They needed to be perfect images because they're paying for 50 perfect images. And I felt like once I stopped doing that and started just delivering as much as I felt fit, then I felt the realm to give them the perfect images and then also give them like more of the creative edits. And it gave me more flexibility on what I was delivering.
Do you think that has been a like a big like differentiator between you and a lot of other photographers is after somebody works with you, they're like, oh, I like that I'm given the ones that like she found were the best. And it's not up to me to choose.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely a mixture of audiences out there because both business types are incredibly successful. I have photography friends that's what they do. You only get 10 edits and then they charge like $50 an edit after that. And so if someone wants 50 edits, like they're making like as much as I make off of a wedding, off of a session, which is fabulous for them. And that works 100%. But most of the time I see that typically in senior photography and studio photography. And so with both seniors and with studio, that's typically the audience is they want the super clean photos and they want more control over the pictures that are being edited because it's of themselves. Like it's typically just a one subject situation. So they are like, I know the angles that I like about myself. So I want to pick them and they want them to be clean because they're meant to be like the timeless type of edit. So they can use them for headshots and grandparents can look back at them and they can show their kids like, this is what your mom looked like when she was a senior in high school and so on and so forth. And then I feel like I'm not really in that space as much. So my audience, if I were to now just like put on everybody like, hey, you have to only pick 60 edits, I feel like a lot of my clients would not come back to me because I think when I'm going to photograph families and couples and it's more like prompt focus and it's more based on the interaction between two people or a group of people, it's going to be harder to pick just the images that like just 50 images because multiple people have different perspectives on who they are and what they want photographed. So I try to use my best judgment to deliver what I feel like is best. And a lot of the times it's more than enough. So I feel like people can typically find what they're wanting out of those. And then on top of that, we don't feel the pressure to like go through because it's not like a subject looking straight at a camera. So I don't feel the pressure to go in and remove all the blemishes and fix all the hair and things like that. I can just let the hair be messy. And if they're looking off, like I don't need to edit things on their face and all of that. So the editing time isn't nearly as much compared.
So are you transferring that same philosophy to like branding shoots? Like are you keeping them sort of like straightforward and clean, or are you finding like avenues to be like super expressive?
Yeah, I feel like the trend now is to kind of lean into the messy. So I'll always give a small handful of the super clean headshots. So if they needed to make a LinkedIn or if they were doing something collaborative and they had to give a headshot and it needed to be like a really clean photo, they could have that. But otherwise, I feel like working in more of the graphic design space and web space, those images are great for that one purpose only. But when I'm working on websites, I love the camcorder footage. I love the blurry picture of whatever you're doing because those make great background overlays for graphics and then for websites and things like that. And yeah, you can just turn a lot of those types of photos into different things compared to like the clean headshot really just has that one purpose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like a lot of times now with my branding photography, I'm starting to incorporate more video and camcorder and film photography and regular photography just because all the different mediums provide like a different opportunity and how you can be used.
Yeah, I hope I want to see more of that. Like even on LinkedIn, like I want to have like the headshot, but I'm only going to use it on like my email and like Slack. But I want to see more like crazy, weird like stuff
Yeah.
on like LinkedIn, especially. You need to update your LinkedIn. You need
It's
just by the way.
old.
I know. You know how I didn't even know what I didn't know what your maiden name was. I was like trying to find you to tag you in this, and I had to go through other routes of previous workplaces to find you. So
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, even talking about like the personality at all, you're starting to see it even in big corporations. I think my two big points is one in corporations, like if you're someone that's on TikTok, which if you're not on TikTok, if you have children, they're on TikTok. TikTok is just, or even Instagram or even Facebook. But a lot of times you're starting to see a lot of these big corporate companies be goofy online because they're trying to build a personality. Because at the end of the day, people are attached to personalities. They're not just attached to a name. And so I recommend this a lot to other businesses, especially those that are solo run, like it's only one person running it. What's going to set you apart from your competition is you. Like simple fact is personality. It's what you do every day. It's how you talk to people. It's the lingo that you use. It's the way you dress. It's basically you're kind of starting to create like a friendship and a relationship, and you want to build that because when it comes time for that person to need your services, they're not going to be like, I wonder like what photographers are out there. They're immediately going to be like, oh, I know this one girl from social media. She makes coffees all the time, but she also posts pictures sometimes. Let me go find her. Or someone that they feel like they can connect to. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of like bigger corporate businesses were starting to lose that a little bit, but they didn't necessarily need it because they are such, like they just completely roam the space. But we're starting to see like they are starting to deep dive into giving personalities to their businesses. There's even some businesses where they just coin a person as being the personality. So they'll show their face all the time, even though it's a business being ran by 30 people, and it seems to be successful.
Yeah. There's some that I enjoy and there's some that I don't. I feel like it's very like mixed when I see the way people respond. They're like so tired of like I guess it's like it depends on if it's done right, because it definitely is like if you're on like TikTok or like Instagram and you see like Slim Jim or something like comment on something, I feel like it definitely depends on the overall brand's like personality before. Mission too. Like even if they never had a personality before, it's definitely weird to see like I don't know, like health insurance, like commenting like slay on somebody's like, and I'm like, oh, come on. That's, I want my health insurance people to be a little bit buttoned up, like Slim Jim and like Wendy's, can get away with it. But, I have mixed feelings on that, but I do enjoy like, that's what I want to like try and do more this year. Is like I wanted to do it last year, but I had a baby last year, so it sort of like messed up my like end of the year goals. Or I didn't have a baby, my wife did, but I was there when she was born. And still there now. I guess I should mention that she wasn't like shipped away or anything. But I feel like one of the things that's like I am bad at doing is like really like showing not necessarily like my personality, but I think like when I talk to like business owners, a lot of times I'm having to like challenge the way that they think about like content creation and usually the content creation I'm working on is like emails, but something as simple as like emails that like so many B2B marketers, or maybe not even like B2B marketers, but just like people in the B2B space are thinking that they need to like write these like super buttoned up, straight to the point emails. And then I come in and I'm like, what if we like ask the person, what if we just like talk to this person like a person, and ask them to reply to our email? Like that would be crazy. And that it like works. And I've mentioned this on this podcast a lot of times, is like, just like stop asking people to like book a call or something and ask them to just like respond to the email. Like you'd be like shocked at how many people like realize that even though like we know that it's just like an automated marketing email, people will like, if you just say like, hey, just like reply to this email and I'll if we can talk about whatever, people actually do respond. And I think like that's almost a lot of times it's felt like taking a risk. And I feel like I need to explain more about what I do that is like not risky, but like how do I need to do better at showing people like online, like I can't like claim to be this person that's trying to like shift the way that we think about B2B content, and I'm not also doing that myself. So that's a goal for me, is like to be more um less polished looking and more like
Yeah.
natural, and I almost said sloppy. I don't think that's a word you said, but like,
Mm.
you know, but
Messy. Yeah.
messy. Yeah, messy. Okay, sloppy sounds way worse. Messy sounds it's right in the right spot.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think it also just um, kind of pushes the conversation on how to create boundaries, though. With that, I think that's also something that I slightly struggle with at times, is then if you're creating it to be so personal, you don't want it to be so personal that it is you in your life. So you have to kind of create that boundary on how you want to run business and how you want your clients to also conversate with you.
Yeah,
Um, and things like that. But yeah, kind of going off of the dialogue of what you're talking about, I had a friend, she booked a social media manager to run her socials for her. And every time she'd post, I'd read the captions and they were just really buttoned up, kind of like what you were saying, and really to the point. And I was just like, Taylor, I think it doesn't sound like you. Like
yeah,
that's not the words that you would say. And you definitely don't talk like that. So I'm sure your clients are kind of like, what is going on, kind of thing too. And sure enough, she was like, you were the seventh person to tell me that. And I was like, then you might want to do something
yeah,
about it. And she ended up talking with her social media girl and was like, we need to change the way this
yeah.
dialogue is, because it doesn't sound like me and my business. So yeah, dialogue is very powerful.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a balance. I mean, that's where like, oh, we got to match tone and voice, which I think are just sometimes are just like crutches in a way of like, if you had to put together like what your tone and voice is, you're probably going to get it wrong, and then you're going to like you probably perceive yourself as talking differently and or speaking differently. And so I think that's where like it's really important to be like um more like yourself, but also more like conversational in the way that you talk and the way
Yeah.
that you communicate, because that's what people immediately gravitate towards. Like I
Right.
think especially with like AI, obviously, like very robotic sounding. Like I get emails all the time, and it's not like a bragging thing, but I get emails all the time about people wanting to be on this podcast, but it's like they're and I'm not like bashing their assistant or whoever sent it to me, because obviously they're trying to get them on as many like shows as
Yeah.
possible, but a lot of times it's like, hey, I really enjoyed this episode, especially where you talked about this thing, and it's like either it's just like a complete like copy and paste from like the episode description, because there's like weird certain words are like
Yeah.
capitalized or whatever, and it's just like, I know that they're like just trying to go as quickly as possible. And I think like the misconception is that you have to like try and pack in a lot of information. And they could have just said like, hey, we really like your show. I really think that this person would be good on it. They do these two things. Do you think it would like, it could be like super simple. And I think we're getting like into this world of like, if you ask AI to like write something for you, it's going to give you like a huge long paragraph with all the information, and it's trying to go for like a word count. And if you yourself are like editing those things, like you're trying to use like AI to help you, and you don't have a good grasp on like what sounds natural or what conversation really sounds like, I feel like that's how it comes across. It's like these very robotic
Right.
things, and they just feel unnatural and weird. And people don't want to like work with something that feels unnatural and weird like that.
Yeah, whenever anyone sends me like an AI response, my first concept is you don't really want it that bad. I think is
Yeah,
my first interpretation is it's if you just put this into a robot, generated some response, didn't even read it out loud to make sure it sounded like you so you could change it to make it sound like you. I understand like needing somewhere to start because we
yeah,
all get brain foggy at times for sure, but you're just copying and pasting and sending it and just hoping someone bites, then I feel like it's going to hurt your reputation more than getting
yeah.
somewhere at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, yeah, I think like we're already at the point where like the most human interaction is like already feeling like better.
Yeah.
Which I guess like I think like last year, or maybe like last year was like the biggest year in like AI stuff. But I know that like I know it's actually been around for like since like 2022 or 23. But I think we're already like hit that point where we're just like tired of things not feeling like human, and that can go even to, again, like there's still like this misconception that B2B stuff particularly is like has to feel very like robotic and professional. And it, of course, like there's a balance between being professional and also feeling like a human is talking to you.
Yeah, I think with AI, if you remove like all the like negativity around it, at the end of the day, it's a tool. So if you use it in my brain the way that it should be used, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think people are using it as an excuse,
Yeah.
as a way to get around work that they don't want to do, not necessarily using it in a way to make their work better.
Yeah.
For example, I have a family friend. He works mostly in mechanics, and he fed his AI all of his mechanical guides to all of the machinery that he was working on. And so if he was running into issues, he'd be like, "Hey, I'm on this equipment. Can you give me something about this?" And it would be like based off of this chapter in this section, and it would help him go find some of that information faster so he could go troubleshoot this equipment.
Yeah.
Which in my brain, like that's a great way to use
Yeah.
it. But if you're using it to write all your blog posts, or if you're using it to send your emails or whatever, then that's just you knowing that you need to do something, you don't want to do it, so you're trying to make a computer do it for you. And maybe you should go hire someone like an actor to do that work if
Yeah.
you don't want to do it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, yeah, using it as a tool, but also like, again, like being able to go through, I think that's a great way to use it. Is just being able to go through like the manuals, like you said, because
Yeah.
that's actually like you're getting to it. You're still doing the work yourself, but without having to sit down and look through thousands of pages of something. And, at the end of the day, like wasting time. Like I feel like that's like, yeah, when you use it as like an excuse, or like you get to the point where you don't even know how to like respond to somebody or write like a respond to an email, like all you have to do is say thanks. Like you really need AI to say thanks for this, or thanks for sending this over.
Yeah, for sure.
So I always end these calls by asking everybody, what is the one hill that you'll die on when it comes to content? And you could be as what did I say earlier, as sloppy as you want to be about this. But I'd love to know, like, I think you've like, I don't think you've built like two different businesses, and you've done a lot through content creation, and you've helped others create. So I'd love to know, like, what is like the one thing that you wish that all the people who are like following you or like listening to this, that were thinking about following what you're doing or just creating content in general for their business, also me, but like what would be like the one thing that you would want like us to take away?
Man, that's hard. I feel like there's probably like a bazillion things that I could say. I think for starters is free work is not bad work, obviously. As long as you set it up properly and create the boundaries for yourself where it doesn't burn you in the future. But like I said, free work is not bad work. And also that if you love what you create, at the end of the day, that's gonna do better for you. I feel like as artists, we get so emotionally attached to the stuff that we put together and we put out, and I wanna say that's okay. Like, that's okay, and if people don't love it and don't wanna buy it, they're either not your clients, or maybe that type of work, although it's great for you, isn't meant to be a lucrative option for you, and so it's maybe meant to just be something that you enjoy for yourself, and you don't need to now burn something that you're so passionate and you love so much just to kind of build a dream that could look different and do better for you. It might be the actual dream that you're just too determined to not look at. I think is probably some good advice.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, because you mentioned earlier, like you got into photography and you really enjoyed it, and then it became something that you kind of like dreaded doing.
Yeah.
And so, which I don't think that was necessarily, you were still doing the things that you loved, but sometimes you just end up you're like too good at it, right? And you're in a way, I think,
Yeah.
and so eventually it starts taking away from like your peace with it. And at the end of the day, like, maybe there's X amount of jobs you accepted that you didn't really want to do, but you kind of have to because it became like the necessity that you did these to pay for things because that's what we have to do.
Yeah. One of my best
Um,
friends that's a photographer, she started waiting tables on the side just to give her some more like consistent income. And it just made her fall in love with photography more. And
yeah,
she's starting to book more than I feel like she has previously. But because she has a consistent income outlet, she doesn't have to feel the pressure to say yes to everything
yeah,
like she had to do previously. She can say no to the stuff that doesn't really make sense
yeah,
to her. But she doesn't see herself as a failure because she has a part-time job. While some creators might be like, I'm a failure because I have to have another stream of money. At the end of the day, we're all just people in a big old world and a universe. Like how you need to make money is none of my business. So
yeah.
you just got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think like a lot of people, especially creatives, are sold this idea of like, do it or learn how to do it and like work on it for a year or something and then go like full time. And I used to have this idea of like being full time, like freelance and like going through it. And when I was kind of off, I wasn't offered. I got to the point to where I was full time freelance, and it was because I was laid off from a previous job, and it became like a necessity. And I was
Yeah.
just like, I don't think I want to. And that's actually like me and my boss now always joke about this. I was like, I kind of came to him and I was like, I don't want to do this full time. I see like what you're doing because he was building this business at this time. And I was like, I don't think I want to do, I see you and I don't want to do what you're doing. I would like to I want to just work somewhere
Yeah.
and do all the fun things and have the opportunity to, this, the full-time job is fueling like the other things that are fun
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like everyone sees like being self-employed as like you're doing the big thing, you're living the big dream. But when you work a typical 9 to 5, you have consistent income that you know is coming in. When you go to work, people typically hand you work to do. You don't have to go dig for clients and create a strategy and like consistently gamble on yourself and the ability of the work that you can do. You just like walk in and they say, okay, this week you're gonna, and then a lot of times you get insurance, you get 401k. Honestly, like when
Yeah.
you look at it, working for someone else has so many perks.
Yeah.
Working for yourself, yes, you don't have to necessarily look to someone for work, but you also lose mentors, which is why like in the creative industry, it can be so lonely. So networking is what's
Yeah.
going to save your life, like figuratively and literally. And um, yes, you can create your own schedule, but when you grow up going to school, and then if you did have a 9 to 5 and now you're going into your business full time, you might start to build like anxiety around the fact that you need to be working during the days like everybody
Yeah.
else is. And you start to kind of work through like a more emotional, I feel like that's just been something that I've had to work through heavily over the last 3 or 4 years, is there's just such a more emotional aspect to owning your own business that no one talks about because everything changes, especially when you're a creative. You could be making 10 grand one month and you might be making 3 grand the next. And it's just like up and down and up and down. And you just have to just be able to be like really confident and in yourself and create the system so you don't allow yourself to crash when things are different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, just the big takeaway is like sometimes having like a 9 to 5 like slaps. Like it's,
It can't, for
I
sure.
know it's like romanticized to work for yourself, but it also like, yeah, it also it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate your time. I know that you are super busy, and so I just want to thank you again for taking the time to be here.
Nope.
And I would love for you to also like shout yourself out because you've got your branding studio and you've also got your photography studio. And so I'd love to you just to like talk about those real quick and let people know like what you do.
Yeah, so my Instagram, most of my work and everything I do, I typically put on Instagram. So For photography, it's by Kaleigh Madison. My first name's spelled a little funny, but I'm sure it'll be posted somewhere. And then my design business is called Rescue Studio. So sounds like rescue, like we're saving somebody, but it's spelled like Q, like an editing Q. So RESQUEUE.studio on Instagram.
Cool. Your website is also really cool. I was checking it out earlier. Super cool. Well, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. And yeah, I'm thankful that I had the time to talk with you.
Cool. Thanks for having me.